So even though we don't exactly know yet who this prostitute is who's riding a beast, we know that she leads the world astray through the kings into idolatry. But we're starting to get a picture of who the beast is that she rides, and that's in verse 8. The beast that you saw was, is not, and is about to rise from the bottomless pit and to go to destruction. So part of what makes these verses so difficult to understand is that the beast is used differently by John in different contexts. So it can refer to the beast as a kingdom, it can refer to the Antichrist as a beast, and it can refer to the devil as a beast. And context is going to determine which one of those it is, and sometimes it's referring to all three because it's the devil that's behind the kingdom who's behind the Antichrist. So you sort of have to tease out which one it is that's referring to. And here it's referring primarily to the kingdom, which is arising from the devil through this Antichrist, coming from this pit. And we'll see that as we go forward, as we identify this beast. So the beast that you saw was, is not, and is about to rise from the bottomless pit. We'll see what that means. And the dwellers of the earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, will marvel to see the beast, because it was, is not, and is to come. Now this calls for a mind of wisdom. Duh. And here he goes and he explains it. It's verse 9. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. Now there's a clue, and that's a clue that is very helpful. Now here's where the commentators color code wires that go a little crazy. Because many have wanted to see the church in these verses, they say, oh, Rome is built on 7 hills, therefore this must be Rome because it refers to 7 mountains. But they forget the fact that Rome is built on 7 hills, not on 7 mountains, and a hill is not a mountain. It sounds like an insignificant thing, but it's not an insignificant thing. Mountains are well attested to in Scripture as referring to kingdoms, sources of power. Hills are never mistaken for mountains. And here it clearly says mountains, and it's referring to kingdoms. For example, in Psalm 30, verse 7, King David is referring to his own reign in the sense of being a mountain. And there he says, by your favor, O Lord, you made my mountain stand strong. You hid your face, I was dismayed. He's talking about his kingdom. He's talking about his reign. He doesn't say, you made my hill stand strong. Or Daniel chapter 2, which is the Nebuchadnezzar's famous vision of the statue, where we're talking about the Lord's kingdom, the Lord's mountain. And here, after envisioning all the kingdoms of the earth, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and then Rome, there is a kingdom of the Lord, which is an uncut stone that strikes the image and becomes a great mountain in Daniel chapter 2, verse 35, that fills the whole earth. So the kingdom of the Lord is envisioned as a great mountain, not a great hill. And then, perhaps most germane to what we're talking about, in Jeremiah chapter 51, referring specifically to Babylon, Jeremiah 51 and verse 25, here it says, behold, I am against you, God talking to Babylon, behold, I am against you, O destroying mountain, declares the Lord, which destroys the whole earth. So there's God referring to Babylon as a mountain. Nowhere does it refer to them as hills. And so when John refers to these mountains, he's referring to kingdoms. He's not referring to the hills of Rome. Only when you want to see the church in these things do you start to say, oh, 7, Rome, 7, therefore it must be. That's miscoding the wires coming into the box. That's sort of having an agenda ahead of time. So what happens is, what John is seeing is this beast, which has these 7 heads, which is representing 7 kingdoms. But he tells us more than that. Go back to Revelation chapter 17, and what does he say about it? He says, verse 9, this calls for mind of wisdom. Again, yeah. The 7 heads are 7 mountains or kingdoms on which the woman is seated. So the 7 kingdoms is not the woman. Whoever this woman is, she's riding these 7 earthly kingdoms. She's hitching a ride on these kingdoms. They are also 7 kings. Now, this has created quite a problem in understanding. In the Greek language, there's no way of saying there are also. And so what's happened is it's led more Bible students down a path of saying, oh, let's go find some kings to try to fulfill this prophecy. So they start looking at Roman kings because they want this to fit kings like Nero and Julius Caesar. But the Greek text basically is saying like this. Let me try to do it with my hands. These are 7 kingdoms, like kings, like kingdoms, like 7 kingdoms is really what he's saying. Like, on the one hand, 7 kingdoms. I know, it's hard to say it in English, but he's not saying 7 kingdoms. Oh yeah, really 7 kings. He's going to talk about 10 kings later, different language. He's really talking about kingdoms. It just doesn't come across well in English that way. He's really not talking about kings at all. And to make it into kings tortures the interpretation, and it just doesn't fit. He's really talking about kingdoms. So push everything else aside. We've got to find out who these kingdoms are. So these 7 heads are 7 mountains. Let's just say there's 7 kingdoms. Okay, so what are they? There's 5 that have fallen, 1 that is, 1 is yet to come. When he does come, he's only going to remain a little while. Now it's easy. Okay, John is living in a time of Rome. Just count backwards. Rome, what was before Rome? Before Rome was Greece. Before Greece was Persia. Before Persia was Babylon. Before Babylon was Assyria. What was the kingdom before Assyria if history is perceived through Jewish eyes? There's only one kingdom that fits that bill. That would be Egypt, because history is thoroughly Jewish. God picked a people, Israel. What's the first kingdom that takes them captive? Egypt. Go forward from Egypt. From Egypt, they're beaten up by the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Medes and Persians, and then the Greeks, and then the Romans. That's where John stands. 5 have fallen. 1 is, that's Rome. 1 is yet to come. That's the kingdom of the Antichrist. That's the new Roman kingdom. That's exactly what he's saying. It's easy to see if you can understand that history is thoroughly Jewish. So verse 10, there's 7 kingdoms. 5 have fallen. Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Persia, and Rome. 1 is Rome. 1 is yet to come. The new Roman Empire, and only for a little while. Then he says something really funny, and this is really key. This is the one that is absolutely mind-boggling. Verse 11. As for the beast, now this is a case where it's used as kingdom. As for this other kingdom that was and is not, it is an 8th. It's a different kind of kingdom. But it belongs to the 7. It is a kingdom. And it goes to destruction. It's not going to stand. You know what that means? That means there's these 7 earthly kingdoms. Let me sound them again from a Jewish perspective. Watch this. Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, the new Rome. That's 7. And then this kingdom that has been existing behind the scenes the whole time that this prostitute has been riding. Let me say that again. It's unbelievably important. Egypt, from a Jewish perspective, Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, the new Rome. And the 8th one, this beast that this prostitute has been riding behind the scenes all the time. You know what that means? That means that there is a kingdom behind the kingdoms. This is the ultimate conspiracy theory. This is the ultimate deep state, but it's not human. You know what it means? It means that there has been demonic tinkering, alien tinkering on planet Earth since day one. Deuteronomy 32, 8 and 9. How many times have I quoted it? Let me go back and read it. Deuteronomy 32. This comes after the Tower of Babel, when the Most High gave the nations their inheritance, when he divided mankind and fixed the borders of the peoples. He did so according to the number of the sons of God. He did so according to the number of the sons of angels. He did so, he put the nations under the angels. They've been involved in human affairs since at least the Tower of Babel. That's when the nations started to form. When we decided that we were going to storm the gates of heaven by building a tower for ourselves, God said, fine, here you go. No wonder they were delaying Daniel's prayers, and the prince of Persia was delaying them, and the prince of Greece was about to come. But verse 9, Deuteronomy 32, 9, but the Lord's portion is his people, Jacob, his allotted heritage. But from one nation, Israel, God had a different plan. He didn't turn them over. This is an amazing thing that is happening here. This means that there is something behind the something. Now we've got to identify one more personage before we end today. And that is, go back to Revelation chapter 17. And in Revelation chapter 17, we're introduced to one more person. And pick it up there. Look in verse 12. And the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings. Now, in this case, the text is very clear. He's now talking about 10 kings. And these 10 horns on the 7 heads of the beast, of the kingdom, are actually 10 kings who have not yet received royal power. So they will come to power. Sometimes it's called a 10-nation confederacy. They are to receive authority as kings for 1 hour. That means a very short period of time. They have not yet come to power. They will during this great tribulation. They will receive power together with the beast. Now this time, the beast is referring to the Antichrist. We see him in Daniel chapter 7. He's the boastful horn that arises among these 10 horns. That's how we know it's the Antichrist we're talking about. Now these are of one mind, and they hand over their power and authority to the Antichrist, to the beast. Now what do? They will make war on the Lamb, that'd be Jesus, and the Lamb will conquer them, for he is the Lord of lords and the King of kings, and those with him are called and chosen and faithful. So we now have more pieces of the puzzle. And so what happens is, we have this prostitute who we still don't know who she is. All we know is that she has led the kings of the earth astray. She has ridden this mysterious kingdom that's behind the scenes, this demonic deep state that's pulling strings on every kingdom of the earth since the beginning of time. We still don't know who she is. And then we see this kingdom behind the scenes. And we know that time is getting short. And we know that there's one more kingdom yet to come, a new Rome. And in this Rome, there's going to be this 10 kings, this 10 confederates. And they're going to give their power to one guy. We would call him the Antichrist. And he's going to wage war with them against Jesus. That's going to be key when we try to figure out who this prostitute is. We're going to do that next time. These 10 are going to wage war against Jesus. But here's the weird part, and this is your hook for next time. This Antichrist and these 10 don't ally with the prostitute against Jesus. They actually hate her, and they go to destroy her. They want to see the prostitute dead. That's a shock. You would think that my enemy's enemy is my friend, but it's not. They desire the death of the prostitute, the one that leads the world astray against God. Why would they ever want that? That's the shock of all shocks. Why wouldn't they want to ally themselves with her? That's a mystery. And when we find out that, I think it would be the greatest shock to the story that has yet been finished. So, we've done a lot. What did we learn? We learned that Satan's kingdom is going to come down. It's pictured in Babylon. And we've got these mysterious personages. We've got this prostitute who has somehow led the world astray into idolatry. We don't yet know who she is. We're building a case, and we'll find out, or we'll make a guess. We've got this beast, which sometimes refers to a kingdom, which it does here, but sometimes it refers to the Antichrist, which it also does here. Sometimes it refers to Satan, which it did in the past. But he's pulling the strings on everything. We've got these kingdoms, earthly kingdoms that have existed already. From a Jewish perspective, it was Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, and the New Rome. I wish I had 7 fingers, but I can't do it. And then we've got this kingdom behind the kingdom. We've got this kingdom behind the veil. Our struggle's not against flesh and blood. There really is something going on behind the scenes, and there has for a long time. And when the new Roman kingdom arises, there's going to be an Antichrist. And there's going to be a war against Jesus. And it's at that moment that Jesus comes back. And we'll be there when that happens. It kind of changes how we look at the day. I mean, you can look at all this and you can say, oh, I don't get it. I don't want to get it. Or we can look at it and stick our head in the sand. Or we can look at it and say, God must have given us this information for a reason. And that reason is to tell us that time is short. And we have the most important message of all time. That's the gospel. We have an urgency of getting the gospel out to this generation. And we know that when Jesus comes back, he wins the war. Why would God tell us this? Time is short. And we do know who wins the war. But we also know there's a lot of stuff yet to happen. There is an action behind the scenes. That's mind-blowing. I can't wait to see what happens in the next video.